This video features the animated short CMMC Madness, followed by an interview with cybersecurity and CMMC expert Gary Wright.
What's up with new compliance frameworks? I mean, just as soon as you are compliant with one, bam, you're not compliant with a new one. It's like evil nation-states are trying to exploit our ever-increasing dependence on computers or something. I thought with each framework I was getting more and more secure. Now I'm insecure about my security. You ever notice just as we are sitting down to watch TV, that's when the device updates? Why can't they update when I'm sleeping?
Yeah, I had to wait for my car to update before I left the parking garage yesterday, and I got a ticket from a robot police officer. Can you believe that?
You won't believe what's happening to me. Do you know what they just put me in charge of at work?
Let me guess, your office's monthly fire drill?
Worse, they put me in charge of the CMMC IT Security Compliance Project.
CMMC, isn't that a yoga class?
No, that's something else. CMMC. Isn't that the comically misguided management certification?
Oh yeah, sure. It's hilarious. No, it's the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. The government basically wants us to become cyber ninjas overnight, or they'll shut us down.
Oh yeah, sure, cyber ninjas, got it.
It's like I'm in the middle of a bad episode of Mission Impossible over there. They're throwing around terms like controlled unclassified information and multi-factor authentication, like it's casual water cooler talk.
So what exactly do you have to do?
Oh, you know, just secure the entire company's IT infrastructure. Nothing too crazy. But do you think I know what half this jargon means? Yesterday, someone told me we need to install a SIEM. I thought it was a sneeze. I said, bless you. They were not amused.
Wait, SIEM? Is that like a special kind of bagel?
It's some kind of system that watches over your network like Big Brother. Logs everything. We've got so many logs. We could open a lumberyard.
Logs? I thought you worked in an office, not a logging camp.
That's what I thought too. But no, every time someone sends an email, the system logs it. If I sneeze near my keyboard, there's a log. If I think about sending an email, it probably logs that too.
Sounds secure. Maybe they'll log this sandwich I'm eating.
And don't get me started on multi-factor authentication. Yesterday, I tried to log into my email, and suddenly, I'm in a phone tree from hell. I had to confirm my password. Then it wanted me to check my phone. Then it sent me a text with a code. And just as I'm about to type it in, bam, phone call. Is this you? I don't know. I'm not even sure who I am anymore.
It's like trying to break into your own life.
Exactly. And then, penetration testing. They're talking about hackers pretending to break into our system. But I'm thinking, why are we inviting them in? That's like leaving cheese out for mice and then being shocked when they show up.
Penetration testing? That sounds awkward.
They say it's all about becoming more mature. I'm supposed to grow our cybersecurity maturity. But last week, I locked myself out of the server room, so I think I've got a way to go.
So what's the plan, Coleman?
The plan! The plan is to pretend I know what I'm doing while asking ChatGPT, what is cybersecurity under my desk? I don't even know what a risk management framework is, but I'm managing a lot of risk right now, just trying not to set off the fire alarms with my stress.
It's like IT Mad Libs, just throw techno cyber babble words together and hope for the best.
Sounds like you're living the dream, Coleman.
Yeah, the dream where I wake up screaming in a cold sweat. Look, if anyone asks, I'm mature. My network is locked down like Fort Knox. But if they ask me what break and inspect full content inspection is, I'm throwing my laptop out the window.
You know what? Maybe I'll just stick with making sure my car is fully patched.
'Tis all fun and games until the logs come for you.
Hi there, it's Ron Gula from Gula Tech Adventures. In this week's video, I sit down with Gary Wright to discuss the CMMC certification. Actually, that's a little redundant, Gary, right? There's an extra C in CMMC for certification. What does CMMC stand for?
Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification.
We were joking before we started talking about this that CMMC is sort of like the new HIPAA, right? There's a lot of, you can't really misspell CMMC, but you can probably throw an extra cyber in there or an extra certification. So that's kind of good stuff. How's it going?
Very good. Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate you coming on the show. For a lot of folks who don't know, Gary and I actually overlapped a brief period, half a month, 2 months at the NSA.
Yes.
Do you have fond memories from the NSA, Gary?
I do.
That's
was a lot of
awesome.
fun.
What are you doing today?
What am I doing today? I do a lot of different things, but mainly I try to help companies become cyber secure. I've done everything from Fortune 100 to Fortune 2000, going in either pen testing companies, tapping their networks, seeing what's going on, and then making recommendations on how they can make things better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How, and are you doing this for yourself? You have a company, right?
Yes, I have a company, Futures Incorporated.
Awesome. We'll put the URL up there. How did you get involved with the CMMC process? It's been going on for a while. What was your involvement with it?
So my involvement was in the early days in 2019. I was contacted and told I should be on this project. So I said, okay. And it's basically history from there. My technical skills in the cyber arena, I have over 32 years of experience performing pen testing, being a red team member, being a blue team member. So they thought it would be a good mix to have a person with both backgrounds on the team.
With the world of compliance frameworks that we have out there, PCI, MITRE, HIPAA, the NIST cybersecurity framework, and so on, why did the DoD want to come up with a CMMC standard? And then what was that early process in figuring that out?
So in the beginning, we were looking for something to actually start helping to protect contract information as well as controlled unclassified information. The PCI and the other frameworks are good for specific areas. NIST has other frameworks that are good for recommendations and how you tighten up a network. But for CMMC, it was specifically for basically giving the backbone on 800-171, the DFARS compliance, to put the teeth behind it so they can make sure people are compliant with that framework. That's already been a requirement.
And, again, for people who are not familiar with it, who needs to be compliant with CMMC?
So from my perspective, anybody within the supply chain that is either working with FCI or CUI information. So you might be a prime that has actually won a contract, but your subcontractors, if they handle CUI or FCI information, they too also need to be CMMC compliant. And then depending on a supplier, you may have a bolt supplier for a plane that has the specifications for that bolt. That might be CUI information as well.
Now, I'm putting up a slide that you sent over here. This is the CMMC level and assessment requirements. There's a lot of acronyms on here. So now if I'm making bolts and I've got 100 customers and one of them is the DoD, how do I figure out where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to do here?
That is a tough one. But what actually happens is when a contract is originally created, the government will decide what level is applied to a specific contract. So for instance, if you're only handling FCI information, most likely they're just going to say it needs to be CMMC level 1. If you're handling controlled unclassified information, the design for the bolt, then they will probably make it level 2.
So if I'm a pizza shop outside the Pentagon, right? Unless I have a contract from the Pentagon, and they call me and say, yeah, you need to tighten up your security at the pizza shop, I'm good.
Correct.
All right. What has been some of the pushback from like maybe the commercial community, right? Is this a way to kind of impose costs, as Rob Joyce like to say, on our enemies, but on the IT of the people who are working there?
Yeah, the biggest pushback has been cost. A lot of companies have complained. You can watch it on LinkedIn. There's been lots of social media posts during the comments section period of the actual task. There was a lot of things coming in saying my company's too small. This is going to cost me tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It will bankrupt me. And the reality is, while there are estimates here and there, I don't believe anybody knows just yet until things start taking off how expensive it's going to be. And I think what's going to happen is people are going to realize it's not going to cost near as much to make things as secure as necessary for the contracts.
Now, I tend to agree, right? I mean, if you're running a network, you need to, for a business, you need to run that network the same way you need to have a legal person, and you pay your taxes and take care of your employees. This is another dimension of all things, and hopefully you're doing the right thing, and you can demonstrate that to the government. I also like to think, though, that there's a lot of opportunity to stop Russia and China from being indirect, right? Isn't that the whole point here?
That is the whole point. Over the years, companies have lost so much of the unclassified information from contracts that places like China basically are able to duplicate the F-35. There's been lots of different technologies stolen, and you have to look at it from the perspective, we as the taxpayers of the United States, we're paying for all this being built. If China doesn't have to invest one dime into the R&D process, and they can steal the plans for the operational solution, that's where they start. So they already start at a leg up. So the more we can protect against things being stolen, the better off we are.
Now, one of the things I find interesting about CMMC is that there's a little bit of new acronyms and nomenclature. You already mentioned some of them, but when we were at the fort, NSA, we had unclassified, secret, top secret, and then for the special days, right, top secret SCI, right? And now I kind of feel like we're dealing with new levels of unclassified, separate, unclassified relative values of information, right? So what is FCI and what is CUI?
So FCI is federal contract information. So if you are the government and I am a prime, that establishing that contract with me, that is federal contract information. Things we produce on that contract, bolts, designs, network security components, what have you, that if deemed necessary, that is considered CUI information because it is things coming out of that contract, products that can be used to help do things for the government.
And this might still exist in a company where they have a field security officer, the ability to maybe hold classified and have a SCIF. They're just kind of extended a little bit more into that unclassified area.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent, excellent. So when CMMC first came out, I was a big fan. I'm still a big fan, but the general concept that the government is going to use the purchasing power of the government, the DoD in this case, to ask their vendors to do a better job, or at least demonstrate the good job they're doing. Right? Don't need to be negative there when they're buying, but there was a lot of pushback. We talked about some of it. I'm going to put up the timeline you showed me about the birth of CMMC. Walk us through like the last 10 years of CMC. What have you seen change that, from the birth till now?
So from 10 years ago, which would have been 2014, things go all the way back to 2010 with President Obama signing things. But you eventually work your way towards, 853. And then you work yourself to DFARS 800-171. And from 800-171, that is level 2. So things haven't really changed much. The things that are interesting is since 2017 and 171's been in place, companies are supposed to self-identify and say, yes, we are compliant. The problem is a lot of companies don't fully understand what that means. So they're saying they are compliant when they aren't. And there's other companies that are like, this is going to cost us a ton of money. Maybe they're not able to design it properly or what have you. And you have a mess because they're not properly implementing it. And then when adversaries come in and steal the data, the government gets upset because they are now losing things that they're paying for. And it just causes a problem. Why pay for things that just constantly get stolen and stolen and stolen? And that's happening all over the board. If you watch the world of breaches, thousands upon thousands of breaches per day go on globally.
What was the business? How when CMMC 1 came out, there were like 5 levels of certification, but now I think we're down to 3. Is that the case? What was the change there?
So in the very beginning of the project, we looked at 800, 171, 853 from component requirements perspectives. But the team actually went to whiteboards. We were designing things from scratch. What good components would you put into a secure network? And then over time, it was realized it can't be done this way. We have to use a framework that's already in place that everybody needs to adhere to already. And that's where 171 came in. And that's how it went from a 5-level plan down to a 3-level plan.
That's excellent. Now, if I'm doing a decent job in IT security, and I say decent job, I can demonstrate compliance with PCI, HIPAA, maybe I'm already compliant with these DoD standards. How hard is it for me to show that I'm compliant with, like, what's my burden of providing that proof? So let's say for like a 500 person, DoD contractor.
Right. So step 1 would be set up an SSP, system security plan. And in there, you'll detail everything about the level that you're trying to become compliant at and tell, what the requirement is and how you're meeting it. And then for level 1, since it's self-attestation, you're just basically going to say, I'm compliant. You're going to upload it to SPURS to show the evidence. Level 2.
What is SPURS?
It's a government system that you upload things to that they can
Clearly,
track.
I've not uploaded. The Gula Tech Adventures is not CMMC compliant, right? I have not done that.
But and then level 2, you can also do self-attestation, and you would also load that up into SPURS. But in level 2, there's also a requirement for C3 PAOs, that's CMMC third-party assessment organizations, to come in and assess your compliance. And as long as you pass 100% of the items, you will be blessed CMMC level 2, and then the information will be uploaded into EMAS.
And I find this really interesting for the standard, because like with PCI in the credit card world, you have to be a QSA. There's a whole certification process to certify vendors. Like Tenable was a certified ASV. We could do scanning. So I was happy to see that there was some certification of the certifier, so to speak here. But that's a lot of acronyms, right? So how does somebody go and find one of these people? Does the DoD run a marketplace for this?
So there's the Cyber AB, which is the CMMC assessment body. And what they do is they track, and they have a whole ecosystem built around it. People like me, if I wanted to go become certified, I will go in, take tests, take training, and then I become a certified assessor. Companies can go in and also become qualified as a CMMC C3 PAO. And then that organization is what comes and certifies another company.
And then if I'm running a small business, how often do I have to recertify?
So for level 1, the attestation is every single year. Level 2 self-attestation is every year. But for level 2 under a certification piece, that's every 3 years.
Excellent. Now, if I'm, again, a small business, I want to use the latest tech, right? Can I use OpenAI, for example?
So that's a good question. So one of the first things you have to do is you have to define the scope of what in your environment is going to process CUI or FCI information. And then you'll take those systems, and that is what you'd put under a broad blanket of your requirements to be applied to. So for instance, if you're a small company like me, I can say I have one system. I just have to lock down that one system. Now, OpenAI, if you're pushing CUI information up to OpenAI, then yes, you would have to have a version of OpenAI that has been certified. But the neat thing about AI is you can also run local versions, and you would have the authority to put the controls around it yourself.
So that's excellent. So I might be able to take, let's say I'm working on, I'm delivering pizza, to the Pentagon, right? So I might not be able to ask the Pentagon, hey, according to my contract, or ask OpenAI, according to my contract, how many people are on shift at the Pentagon right now, right? But I can still, when I'm making pizza, I can probably still ask OpenAI how to make pizza because that's not,
Exactly.
that's kind of interesting. Now, what about other technologies like Office 365? Like that stuff's in the cloud. What do you think about that as far as locking those things down?
So Office 365, if you bring it up, they do state that they can become CMMC compliant. There are some things you have to do as a company. Your admin that controls O365 for your organization, they'll have to put a few things in place to make sure the controls are in properly. But yes, they can become CMMC compliant.
And I think it's interesting because we see a lot of vendors, go through this. And if we go back to the days of when we were at the NSA, everybody's just kind of turning their head that like, look, the cloud train is left. We're going to have this separate cloud to do high and give you all these kind of additional controls. And you do get these benefits from doing that, but you're still kind of securing somebody else's cloud. How do you feel about cloud security in general, right?
So cloud security, the benefit of it is if the company, the cloud owner, has a set of selections you choose, it makes it very easy to secure things. One of the negatives of the cloud is that if, say, 1,000 companies are all using the same vendor, that would give one place for an adversary to target a lot of attacks and attempt to get in. So that is one possible negative of that.
Yeah, and we've seen things like Cloud Hopper, right, where it's not like it's your system and you got the forensics, maybe a full PCAP, full telemetry logs. If somebody hacks the cloud and they take your data, it's on the cloud vendor to do the incident response there.
Correct.
Yeah. So one of the companies that I was telling you a little bit about before in our portfolio is BMO. And BMO, their whole pitch is to take the entire Microsoft stack, which is cool, their EDR all the way to the spam and authentication, but they wrap it up and they've got these point click. You can be PCI secure, you can be HIPAA compliant, you can be SOC 2 compliant. And they recently announced they're going to be CMMC. They're waiting for the CMC certification. Now, I believe in that situation, even if you had BMO and you're running green across the board, you would still need to have one of these other assessors come in and basically audit you and prove that you're still CMMC compliant. Isn't that right?
Yes. If you're going for CMMC level 2 certification, you would need a C3PAO to come in. If you're going to level 3, that's actually where the DIBCAC would have to come in and do the certification themselves.
And the CMMC, the scope is for the quality of or whatever you're doing for the contract, right? It's not the entire business, right?
Correct.
So that's I think there's some really cool things. Unlike SOC 2, which is basically all your business processes. So these are all a little bit different. What's the smallest company that you've seen get certified with CMMC?
I don't track that, but I mean, I think it would be very simple for a single person company to get qualified.
And then could you speculate like how would a Tenable or a rate, have somebody with more than 2,000, 10,000 people, is it more difficult for them?
I wouldn't say it'd be more difficult because a company that size most likely is already taking steps to keep their environment secure. So as long as they just go through the proper steps and fulfill the requirements, it shouldn't be too hard for them. And I mean, I know Tenable's a pretty secure company, so I don't think I'm worried about that.
Knock, knock. I shouldn't joke about that. Now, if I've got multiple, like say I'm doing business with the Air Force, the Navy, and the Army, and the Marines for the folks out there, right? Do I need to have 4 separate CMMC certifications per contract, or am I good at the sort of the union of those requirements?
It's my understanding if you were, say the highest contract you had was level 3. If your environment is level 3 and other contracts are level 2 and level 1, you're fine. You meet it trickles down. So as long as you're the highest, it's no problem. If you handle level 2 contracts and below, you're also fine. It's just when you get to a new area that you might have to do something a little different. And again, it's also scope. So if one contract has a certain 100 machines in one part of your company that are needed, and then another contract has, say, 500 machines in a different area of your company, you may have to have 2 different enclaves covered there.
The last question I was going to ask you about CMMC is just this notion of like, I'm a commercial company and maybe they're concerned, afraid. They don't want to dip their toe into doing business with the DoD. Like a lot of times for my startups, I'm like, look, hey, until you've got the growth and scale to go after a contract that might take you 18 months to 2 years to land, don't spend a lot of time on the DoD. We have a company in our portfolio called Second Front, and they enable applications, commercial applications, to get hosted on the high side with continuous authority to operate, right? That scares the crap out of most people who just serve up stuff on the web. So what kind of advice could you give to people who maybe are thinking about going to business with the DoD, but they're not sure if their like IT systems are ready and up for it?
Well, I mean, the question is, are they purposefully trying to make things secure? If they are, then they're already one step ahead of a lot of the other companies. From my experience, a lot of companies are saying they're secure, but they haven't done much. For instance, the Penn State thing. Did you recently see that?
I did not. What happened there?
Penn State got in trouble under the False Claims Act because they claimed they were 80171 compliant. They had somebody tell on them, and they got fined $1.25 million for lying about it. So as long as you're a company that is purposely trying to do it, you just have to take the right steps. There are going to be lots of consultants out there to help people. I will caution people, try not to go to the people that are, snake oil companies. But there will be a lot of companies out there that can help people and help them quickly.
Awesome. All right. So since you've had a career in the government, right? You've worked for a number of the labs and the three-letter agencies and whatnot. You have Futures Inc. What does Futures Inc. do? How can people get a hold of you? What are some fun things that you might want to talk about?
Sure. So one of the things we do in most recent years, I like doing tabletop exercises. This is where we go into companies and we simulate. It's all simulation, all by word of mouth, how we would run attacks against your current environment. You bring your technical people in, you sit down, and we talk about it. And I've done this for every military branch, a lot of civilian branch government agencies as well, and some commercial companies. And the benefit is nobody's actually launching an attack. You're identifying things before the attack happens. The companies can sit down and make them secure through that. I also I collect data breaches, and we use data breach information to help identify things with companies that they may or may not know that's out there. For instance, through some of the data breaches, we've actually helped talk to companies that didn't even know they were under attack, let alone know that 20, 30 gigs of their data had been bled out to the internet. As far as reaching out to me, I mean, my email, my company website, futures-inc.com. I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Awesome. Well, Gary, thank you very much for joining us today and talking about CMMC. And I encourage people we need all the vendors we have here in the United States to support the country. And if you have something you think Uncle Sam wants to buy to protect the warfighter, help the warfighter, don't be intimidated by this standard. So, Gary, thanks again one more time.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us here. Once again, I'm Ron Gula, Gula Tech Adventures. I hope everybody has a great week.